Please understand, this market is not terrible. There's actually plenty of buyers that probably would love your house, but you have to recalibrate your strategy and you have to recalibrate your expectations as to how it's going to go in order to be successful. So I've had some interesting interactions lately with people that have actually tried to sell their house over the last 4 or 5 months, and they've been unsuccessful and been frustrated, confused. They feel like they did everything that they could possibly do to get their house sold, and it just didn't happen. And it's an interesting time in the market because realistically speaking, their homes are not the reason that it didn't sell. The reason their homes didn't sell is because the market shifted so quickly that when they came on the market in March and April, they were relying on sales that happened in January and February. And as a result, they had a false expectation of how things would go, and they didn't know it. They thought that they applied the perfect strategy, positioning and pricing and everything that they needed to do that has worked in the past and appeared to be working up until that point. And what's unfortunate is many agents don't have the data, knowledge, or the experience of many years of selling homes, or really even the communication skills to let a seller know, hey, look, this is what we thought was going to happen. The dynamics in the economy, the political landscape, and in the housing market, specifically to Silicon Valley, shifted so quickly, we need to recalibrate what we're doing. Instead of doing that, they just kept trying and trying to do the same thing over and over again, and it wasn't working. So if you find yourself in the situation where you've had your house on the market at some point this year, maybe in the last 2, 3, 4, or 5 months, and you're feeling frustrated or confused as to why it hasn't sold, or really you're just feeling dejected, like, hey, the market is terrible, that's what my agent is telling me, and that's why this is happening, please understand, this market is not terrible. There's actually plenty of buyers that probably would love your house, but you have to recalibrate your strategy and you have to recalibrate your expectations as to how it's going to go in order to be successful. And some people are going to have to accept that their house might not be worth as much as it would have been in January or February. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have a great price that can be drawn out of that property with the right strategy. Also, if that number that is ultimately the highest number that you can possibly get in today's market is not good enough and you don't have to sell, it's probably a good idea to wait. Almost every single year for the last 13 or 14 years, the early part of the year, January, February, most of the time March and April, but in the last 2 years, it's only been January, February, we see the strongest sales in terms of price and the negotiation power that a seller has. If history is our guide, there's a good chance that if you wait till January of next year, you might be in a better position than you are today. Again, if you can wait. The factors that cause it really have a lot to do with inventory. When inventory is super, super low, buyers have to compete for houses, which drives the prices higher. It also creates competition, which makes buyers buy hype and excitement a little bit more than they might under other circumstances. So what are the factors that have made this year a little bit deeper and this year maybe start a little bit sooner? First of all, conflict in the Middle East affects fuel prices worldwide. It affects the economy in multiple other ways that ripple off of there. And as a result, people are feeling less confident and certain, and that's gonna affect buyer behavior, which is gonna slow down sales. When sales slow down, inventory creeps up more quickly. In addition to that, buyers are also less confident and less certain as a result of the fact that here in the Silicon Valley, a huge part of the buyer pool is software engineers. AI possibly replacing some of those jobs is a real concern for some people who would be buyers. The same goes for uncertainty around work visas and whether or not people are gonna be able to continue to work here. If they can't work here, how can they afford a $10,000, $11,000 mortgage payment? It slows the market down such that inventory creeps up faster than it normally would. And when that happens, that perpetuates the fear. Not only is it not a great time to buy because of a personal reason, but also maybe it's not a good time to buy because everybody's selling all of a sudden. But here's the catch. Everybody's not selling all of a sudden. The number of people that are going to sell in a given year is pretty steady throughout the Silicon Valley, throughout history. When they're bunched up and how that inventory number evolves over time is what causes the market to slow down and cool down or speed up and get crazy. Is that the only thing that's happening? No, actually. And this is really where my 25 years of experience, the data, really paying close attention to what's happening allows me to understand another, even maybe more important factor than all of those, causing this to be worse than it would normally be. When the market slows down, listing agents typically tell their sellers that we need to be transparent with our price because we don't know if we can generate multiple offers and we don't know if we can make sure that people are going to pay over the asking price. And the interesting thing about that is that's actually not the best advice for the seller. That is, however, advice that hedges the bet for the listing agent, because if they tell you to have your price low, and then they don't, in their minds, generate an offer that's actually going to reach your expectations, you're going to blame them. So the best way to avoid being blamed is to tell you to do transparent pricing. The problem with that is that once you do transparent pricing, all the buyers come, see your house, whether it be on Redfin, Zillow, or in person. They say, that's a nice house. I would like that house, but based on the price, it's going to be here in 2 to 3 weeks. And so I'll circle back to it. They may go see some other houses and circle back in 2 to 3 weeks, but by the time they circle back, they're going to change their psychology to, this has been on the market 3 weeks. I wonder why. At best, they're going to be thinking, I can write a lower than asking price offer. So you've already shifted all that leverage over to the buyer side by pricing it transparently. Now, in addition to that, there's going to be other properties for sale where they don't price them transparently, but actually still use the leverage of a below market list price. The buyers are going to show up and say, this one's going to be gone in a week, so if I want it, I better act now, which drives that competition, and even in a slower market, still brings the price up to market value. What is market value? The market shifted in Silicon Valley so quickly this year, a lot of sellers actually thought that they were listing their properties at below market value, thinking that they were going to generate multiple offers and springboard into market value. And in reality, the market shifted before they came on. And as a result, they actually ended up pricing at or above true market value. And it makes it look like that strategy didn't work. This whole conversation has to start with understanding what exactly true market value is before you can even talk about what list price you're going to have and whether or not that's transparent. Because if you think your house is worth $1.7 million, but in reality, the market has already shifted it down to 1.625, for example, which is what happened in March, then you're going to list at 1.625 thinking that you're going to springboard to 1.7, but you're actually at market value. And then the buyers are going to do that circle back thing I talked about earlier. There are still buyers out there, and there are still buyers writing offers and making transactions. Here's what you need to know in order to attract those buyers. Number one, you need to know what your true market value is on your house. And I can say with a lot of confidence, that's anywhere between 5 and 10% below what the comps were in January or February. There may be even comps now that have closed since then that will indicate what the true market value is. You still need to list the property lower than that by a good 5, 6, 7% in order to have that effect of this house is going to go quick so that you can create that competition and drive it up to that price. The second thing is that buyers are no longer buying in excitement or buying hype. They're really buying confidence now that the property that they're buying is not going to have a lot of problems. Anything that you can do to button up the inspections and that a buyer feels comfortable with the purchase is going to make sure that when buyers do come to your house, they're not going to have any objections. That's going to help you generate offers. They want to buy confidence and they want to buy certainty, but they also want to buy defensibility, and that's where the price comes in. They need to feel like I got a good house and I got a good enough deal on it for me to take this risk right now. That's where you need to be if you don't have a choice but to sell your house right now. So when it comes to this market, again, listing agents are telling sellers to price transparently. If you know true market value and you price transparently, you're probably not going to succeed. And if you are relying on outdated comps and you consider that transparent, you're definitely not going to succeed. If you ignore your listing agent's advice altogether and you just want to test the market, let me tell you something. In the Silicon Valley, whether the market is super, super hot or it's a little bit cooler like it is right now, and I want to emphasize a little bit slower and cooler. If you compare this to any other market in the world, it's screaming hot. But this is never, ever a test me market. It's like when your mom used to tell you as a kid, don't test me. Silicon Valley real estate market will tell you, don't test me. If you price it too high, forget about it.